Welcome back to the Drain Club podcast, all you ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages. We got some special guests tonight. We're missing a Ginger. Ginger's at his wedding. He's got a wedding tomorrow, so we gave him the night off.
So his old lady's not going to watch this.
I told him. Anyways, so because Gingy's gone, I had to fly in some special guests from halfway across the country.
Hello.
We got Mr. Nicolas Cage over here, all the way from El Paso,
Texas, baby.
Yep, and then we got Wish.com Julio Iglesias over here. He flew here all the way from Arizona.
Here I am.
Are you having culture shock yet from being here in Atlanta and as cold as it is? And
well, no, I think it's all right. I mean, it wasn't bad today. I probably the last 4 days we missed. We're probably lucky to miss, right?
Mike had to wear his Mafia jacket.
That is a Mafia
I've been
jacket.
wanting to wear this. I never get to wear a jacket and have a suit.
Mike thinks people take him seriously now that he dresses in this.
What is that made out of?
I don't know. I bought it like at Dillard's somewhere. I don't know. I bought it.
It looks like somebody made it out of an old wool GI blanket.
It's what I was
and
going
just dyed it gray.
It's what I was going for.
Okay.
It looks very serious.
Like a homeless shelter. They just gathered up all the wool blankets and made them.
Yeah, turned them gray and was like, let's start making jackets.
Look, it works. It works.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking it works.
I mean, who cares where it came from?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad y'all are here. It's nice to have some different faces on the podcast, or some different voices for y'all that are listening. Tonight we are going to be. I say tonight. I always say tonight because we film these at night. But whenever you're listening, today we're going to be talking about what is it that we decided on?
Our first topic and double topic of the night is inflatables versus aluminum boats and the future of plastic and inflatable boats and what that looks like.
Oh, I'm definitely going to need a drink to talk about this. Let's start with this. We're going to be trying out this is the Willet Straight Rye Whiskey, handcrafted in Kentucky. This is the family estate bottled small batch rye. It is 54.6% alcohol by volume. It's 109.2 proof. It is hand-selected white oak barrels and aged for 4 years and bottled at cask strength.
Wow. What does that mean for the layman listening to this podcast, like myself?
It's okay. So Willet makes a pretty fancy-dancy rye whiskey, and a lot of people are like them. Actually, Kyle brought this in for us to try. So when you see Kyle, thank you. Tell him thank you for allowing us to try this. Because I would never personally purchase this bottle. To be honest with you.
So you're telling me this is like the military special?
No, it's just highly sought after because a lot of people talk about it, and it is good. But I've never tried it because I don't pay too much for bottles that I don't know anything about. So, anyways,
wow, strong pour there, Mike.
I didn't mean to pour that much. Does anybody want to switch glasses? Because I'm not going to drink all that.
I'll switch glasses.
I'm not going to drink all that. All right, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Kelly, Luke, you gotta let Daddy drink at least one night out of the week here.
It's got a good nose to it for a rye.
Yeah, it smells good. I'm a Canadian just for the back.
I'm not a liquor connoisseur, and I have never understood how anybody could just
yeah,
it's for men that don't wear wool coats.
They don't just taste it. Like it all tastes the same. It tastes like fire.
So I'm background here. It's Pendleton and Crown is my preferred. So let's see what this.
So have you always been a Canadian whiskey guy?
Yes, growing up in Washington State, you have lots of Canadian whiskey infiltration there. So
is it just because it's close to old Canada?
Yeah, it's close to Canada, and I don't know why, but Pendleton, Oregon is home of Pendleton whiskey, so it's got some local connection too. So it's supposedly the Northwestern and Western Canadian Cowboys whiskey, apparently. At least that's how they branded it.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I've tried some really good Canadian whiskeys. Alberta is a really good one. Are you okay over there, Mike? You want to show
I'm just bracing myself.
You gotta take your schnoz and you gotta put it down in a glass and give it a little sniffy sniff.
Yep, let it breathe.
Yep, and then you gotta smell past the alcohol and pull out the notes,
flavors.
of floral.
I just don't think I'm cut out for this.
It's got
the notes
got
of
some
rye.
floral notes. It's got some really heavy rye grain notes.
It
a little
does.
bit of barrel char. It doesn't have a ton of age on it, so it's just a little bit of barrel char.
And it doesn't have it doesn't have a lot of
How
bite
can you
either.
tell that from taking like one sip?
I was just smelling it. I only took one little sip, but
It doesn't.
You
The
can
nose.
smell all that. You can't smell like it doesn't make you high.
No.
Off the fumes.
No,
That smells like straight up rubbing alcohol.
it's not. You gotta go past
It also
that.
tasted like rubbing alcohol.
You know what? Isn't this
With-
your famous saying
with
that the
perfume.
few can't be
No.
the many, or the many can't be the few,
Whatever.
or whatever.
It tastes like bug spray in feet. It tastes good. It's not.
Bug spray in feet.
And rubbing alcohol. The three. It's a guy, like, they all
It
suck
tastes
it in a
like
cup.
bug spray and feet
I'm
flavored
not ever
rubbing
going to
alcohol.
taste it again. My throat is actually clearing up though.
It does have a little more bite to it than a Crown or a Pendleton. I think.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit higher, and it's done a lot like, I know you've tried a few bourbons, Nick, but it's done a lot like bourbon where it's aged in a white oak barrel. It's just the grain bill is different. It's got more rye in it than it does corn.
I got you. Makes sense. Okay.
But I definitely get some sweetness out of it. This is a really good Willet rye. Like, I actually really like this. I would never buy this though because it's expensive.
Oh,
It is?
You got treated to a treat
Yeah, I
today.
got treated to a treat. What do you think about it being old Mr. Canadio over there?
I like it. It's got a little bit more bite than what I'm used to. And honestly, I don't usually drink it straight. I'm definitely like a ginger ale and Crown or ginger ale and Pendleton mix kind of guy. You know, I gotta have my frou-frou drink.
Just, you got to go little bits at a time. You can't do it all at once.
I want the audience to know not to take my opinion seriously about this. 'Cause I don't drink seriously. I don't drink alcohol at all. It's probably been like 20 years since I actually took a sip of any liquor, and so just not my thing.
Yeah, I don't drink much anymore. I'm like a quarterly social drinker at most.
And when I did
anymore.
try liquor, I was not good at it. I had to give it up.
Were you just
Mike ended up on the television when he got on.
Were you just wild?
Yeah, I was not a good drinker, if anything. I gave it all up.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Smart decision.
Not because I'm judging anybody. It's I personally was not good at it. Don't do things you're not good at, ladies and gentlemen. It's like rule number one of success.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of success, you had a lot of success with the inflatable world recently. In the last year or so?
Thanks.
You have. You
Good segue.
You got to try a lot of new inflatable boats before a lot of us did, and you got to spend some time on them, film them. You've done some review videos.
Yeah.
How do you feel going from the John boat world, which is what you've been used to your whole life, to now getting into inflatables?
Well, I have you know, Chris, that the first boat on that channel was actually an inflatable.
What was
It
it?
was a Seagull Fold Cat 375. That
Was that in the late 1900s?
It was like in the 2010.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, no, it was it was like my first video, so it was
Is it
obviously
still
not
on the
great.
channel? Can we go look
It
at it?
is, but it's like
Really?
Buried under 400
you don't want to
videos?
watch it. It's the worst video. But
It's like a baby
back
video.
then
deal.
when YouTube was kind of raw and nobody had any better content, I had it in,
They
right?
had nothing else better to watch,
That's
so they
facts.
watched your
That's facts.
inflatable review.
If somebody else has something better to watch, they will. But I had my moment where nobody was better, which is good because that video was terrible. But anyways, what I did, so like I ended up getting a replacement hull for whatever reason, and they sent me an extra bunch of slats, and so I combined all the slats because it had like an open floor. You had to step on the slats.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily like that about it, so then I put twice the amount of slats, and it was fantastic.
a pontoon boat almost, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much a floating pontoon boat, floating dock, and then I did some other things to it. And then actually, that's how I even found John Boats because YouTube tries to link you to like videos.
Yeah, stuff
of
that
boat
you might be
mods.
interested in.
And then I found out what you could just make your own bass boat. And I would have never actually found out what John Boat to Bass Boat was, unless unless I had made that inflatable. So it was nice that was so long ago. It was nice to come and revisit them after learning all the skill to build what it takes for us all to build boats the way we do.
So did you ever buy another inflatable after that first one? And did you just stick with John boats, or did you have an inflatable off to the side, like a little side inflatable?
No, I never bought any more inflatables except for
Squishy side piece.
like stand-up
Yeah, side
paddleboards.
piece.
And and mainly that's just because when I had that inflatable is because all I had was an apartment and a compact car.
Oh,
And the only way you're going to get a full-sized boat without a truck and a trailer and a garage, or at least a yard, is an inflatable.
Yeah.
It's the only way. Otherwise, you're kayaking it with a little cheap Walmart car top and things.
Yeah.
And those things, they are what they are. They serve a purpose, but they don't in any way compare to the standability, the fishability, and the stability of an inflatable. You can't beat it. So, it's like shortly after that place, I got a big property with a lot of room, and I just never went and got another one. I came up and moved up to Havasu, and then I got a Carolina skiff, and that was it.
Yeah, your first one was not even a John boat; it was fiberglass.
Yeah, it was Carolina skiff, and then ever since then, it kind of obviously went one way. But I always wanted to revisit like inflatables. I just didn't really know what were you gonna do to them? You know, like they kind of made how they are. And so I had thought that maybe attaching things to it with like straps and D-rings might be the way to do it. But I always wondered how well that would even work. And so it wasn't really until we got these light skiff airs and you just put together the base model that you see it, the front deck is attached just by straps and D-rings. And it works really well. It doesn't make any noise, doesn't flex. And then so it kind of just took seeing it. And then I'm like, well, you could just do this to the whole boat. And so we decked the whole boat. We extended the front deck, made a back deck, and that changed the fishability and the stability of the boat tremendously. Like things you could do for it. We added storage into the deck. We showed everybody how to do it on YouTube for cheap. You know, people are saying, oh, you spent $10,000 on that boat. No. So, it was not $10,000. It was not even half that.
I want your opinion on this. You've been in the John boat world for a while, and you've had a lot of experience with inflatables. Do you feel like they are interchangeable, or is there a place and a purpose for each one?
I mean, I don't know if you can really beat a hard hull. Like, you can't puncture it with a lure. So, I mean, granted, the inflatables are hard to do that, but that's everybody's chief thing is, like, it can pop. So, I mean, that's always going to be a black iron inflatables anywhere. But if you're just careful and you watch yourself, like, I think they beat a John boat.
Okay.
For sure. I mean, for what they are, that thing has 900 pounds capacity.
Yeah, you ain't getting that.
You're going to find a John, 12,
13
13-foot John boat's going to have, what, 400?
380, 400 at the most.
The draft of it is going to sink way below the water line at its max capacity. It's just not going to be able to go as shallow. And I don't know. And you also have to have the room for it.
Yeah.
It's just not convenient. I mean, these inflatables that we're selling, you can just break it down and stick it in your shed or in a bedroom closet. You really can just put it away.
Now, here's a question that I had that I haven't really gotten a straight answer on yet. Maybe either one of you know. Is it okay to leave an inflatable inflated all the time for the life of the boat, or does it need to be deflated at some point?
Only if you need to lubricate the vinyl. So like 3-3 protectant, especially in the hotter months where the UV index goes up, you need to be making sure you're on top of it. And before you stow it, even if it's in a shaded area, you should apply 3-3 protectant all over it and then stow it. And then also, if you're going to leave it out in the sun for long periods of time, it needs to be heat welded versus glued. So the glued hulls, if you
like
leave them
the
out
light skiff air, the NT300,
those are heat welded. Yeah,
those are heat welded. Okay.
Yeah, but there are some out there that are still glued, and glued does work. It's worked for years, and there's some successful companies that only do glue boats, like Seagull.
Okay.
And Seagull's been around for as long. I mean, obviously since I've been doing this whole thing.
Yeah, they're a pioneer.
Yeah, so that being said, I wouldn't leave one of those out in the sun. I would pack it up. Like, okay, I'm done. Put it back in the RV or put it back in the garage, wherever.
Okay.
Well, the biggest thing you're talking about, Mike, is like just UV degradation, right? Like it's
the
being the
glue
material
can't
it
take
is. Yeah, like being the material it is. Just like if you got a pontoon boat sitting out with a bunch of vinyl, furniture, is making sure you cover it with either a cover or 303 protectant to give it some sunscreen.
I would definitely cover the boat,
especially where we live.
That
that sun is ridiculous out in.
Now, what about
Arizona.
the actual air inside of it? Is it okay to leave it inflated? If I had a covered area to store it in, can it stay inflated all the time, or does it need to be deflated?
No, I mean it'll permeate.
So it'll
a
lose
little
a
bit.
little air.
You'll lose a littlest bit, and you have to do a few little maintenance pumps before you take it out again. And obviously with colder weather, the pressure will drop. And you got to be conscious of that though. If it's colder in the morning and you know it's going to heat up in the afternoon, maybe go a PSI or two under the max
because it increases pressure.
It's
as it gets
definitely
hotter.
going to expand into heat. It will, and then you don't want those tubes to be overpressured.
Okay. Nick? What's your experience with inflatable? I know you've been around the boats for a long time.
Yeah, so my first boat, so honestly, this is kind of a shared theme here, but my first boat was a Sea Eagle as well. It was definitely one of the cheapest ones. It was one of the very entry-level, like $200 ones you get at Costco or Walmart, Sea Eagles. Okay. And that was my first boat for a solid like 6 months at 12 years old and got me on the water, and I'm pretty sure I popped it. But that was also because it's one of those very inexpensive ones, but it got me on the water and got me falling in love with being on the water. So that was my first inflatable, and then I went to an aluminum V, a little 12-foot V-hole turned into a bass boat after that one. But my wife's dad is a avid sailboater, and in the sailboat world, they're all about inflatable dinghies. And so I've had the chance to drive around on plenty of different types of inflatable dinghies, all from like a 9-footer with a little 10-horse outboard, which is cool. Like you can put big outboards on little tiny dinghies.
Yeah, they have incredible
yeah, and they're like little
them.
pocket rockets, man. They're pretty cool. All the way to like a 13 or 14-footer where they put little center consoles in them. So it's just for our niche, right, and our type of folks, like inflatables aren't a normal everyday thing for those people. In like the sailboat world, inflatables are almost an everyday occurrence, right? Or you go to Europe or you go to other parts of the world, inflatables are the main style of boat, right? And so I don't know what, if it's just U.S. culture or, supply and demand, all that jazz, but
it's kind of luxury.
Yeah, like
most of the world has either an inflatable or a fiberglass.
Yeah, totally.
Or plastic. Yeah. The aluminum thing down here in the U.S. is really an us thing when it's slowly fleeting away with the expense of aluminum.
Yeah, totally.
So being somebody who's not into sailboats a lot, I have a little bit of knowledge of them, but not a ton. But if I was thinking about getting into sailboating, what would the purpose of having a dinghy be? Like, what do you use them for?
Well, so a sailboat, the thing is, the sailboats have these keels, right, that are super weighted down to be able to keep the sailboat level and also keep it so, like, say for instance the wind is pushing the sail in one direction to keep the boat balanced, right? It's like a counterbalance, and the things are typically 2 to 6 feet deep, right? So you can't just go beach a sailboat. Well, the day sailors you can, but the larger sailboats, it's mid to larger sailboats, you can't beach them, right? So you need a way to be able to get to and from shore, or something with power that you can go 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, if you want to go adventure or something, right? Yeah. And so it just provides a lot of flexibility off of the mothership, whether you have a big sailboat or even a little sailboat, and it's also easy to store, right? Like that's a beautiful part. Like you can either tow it behind your sailboat when you're traveling, or you can just, throw it in a storage hatch. Yeah. So it's just the flexibility part is really unbeat. And then too, like the fact that, you can on an inflatable stick a larger outboard on it and get cruising, and safely cruise with 1 or 2, 3 people on it. You're not going to load 3 people in a 12-foot John boat and a 10-horsepower outboard and go cruising at 20 miles an hour. You can do that with an inflatable dinghy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to sink air.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, we're talking about the shallowness and the draft and the low capacity. Like nothing, air doesn't like to go underwater. Especially when it's compressed into a tube at so many psi.
Yes.
Like it will
physics
just fly you forever.
Physics lesson of the day.
Yeah, you can load that thing and it'll barely draft.
Well, I asked a question about the sailboating thing because we've had a couple calls here at the shop from sailboaters, and when you're in the sailboat community, you're used to the sailboat lingo.
Yeah.
And being outside of it, and I'm down here in the South, I ain't got no use for a sailboat. So when people call, they say stuff, and I'm like, what in the hell are they talking? Like how one guy was telling me he's going on a trip to the Bahamas, and he was using a dinghy and an electric outboard, and he's like, I'm going to use it for island hopping. And I'm like, you're going to get drunk. That's all I heard. But then he sat and explained it to me about how they go to the different islands, and they have to park offshore a little bit. So they use the dinghy to get back and forth so they can, stay for a couple of days. And I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty rad.
Oh, did you watch the last podcast that we did?
No.
Where we prank called Nate?
No.
Okay, good.
You need to cut the shorts.
That into a short.
Yeah, we need to cut that into some shorts.
Well, his kid ruined it. Landon was in the back. I think it was Landon. Yeah, I think he was in the background. He's like, I've heard this before. It's a prank call. And then Nate was just like, screw you, and hung up. But we tried to prank call you, and you didn't answer.
Oh.
I thought that was going to be epic. But you didn't answer.
Put it on the calendar for next year.
Yeah.
Mike will forget all about it by the time March rolls around.
He probably will.
You should try it.
Yeah.
I'll probably
Hi, this is
forget
Michael
about it by
Lopez,
tomorrow.
Tiny Boat Nation Tech Support Line. How may I help you?
Oh, don't call the tech support now. Because then I'll have to take it.
Okay, so both of you have a lot of experience with inflatables. Where do you see the inflatable industry going in the future? Because from what I've seen and what little bit of knowledge I have on them, it seems like it's growing in not only popularity, but the companies are starting to produce more and more inflatable boats in different styles for different types of fishing, different types of boating applications. Where do you guys see this going?
So it's only going to go up, and the reason for that is because the aluminum john boat, we're not talking about the Grizzlies or the Roughnecks of the world. The standard tracker topper, that style aluminum john boat is going away. It is not being sold hardly anywhere, if at all. If you find one on Craigslist, that's probably your only way you're going to find one. And something needs to replace that. And so you're going to see a surge of plastic boats, and you're going to now see a surge of inflatables. Now you're seeing all these companies, these big companies like Newport, like Flycraft, Neptune, and just recently our light skiff Air, like take inflatables seriously and try to make them actual true fishing platforms. Where before they were kind of just something you transported yourself in, right? You could make them, you could fish out of them, but they weren't terribly comfortable, and now you can. And so I think that people will definitely go. And this is just the break of it. I think we'll see a lot more.
Yeah, and the cost is a big factor too. Like with the inflation that we've experienced over the past 4 to 5 years, has made entry-level boats much harder to get into. And with an inflatable, I mean, for essentially $2 to $3 grand, you can have a fully capable 2-person boat ready to go. And obviously your power and horsepower and all that jazz can vary that price tag. But for a very reasonable amount, you can have a very much ready-to-fish, ready-to-go boat at your fingertips. It's highly portable. Without having to dump the change on the kind of inflation adjusted boats that are coming out from the major manufacturers in the aluminum and fiberglass space.
Yeah. Well, as the popularity of the inflatables has grown, so is the plastic boat world. Now, how do you guys feel about plastic boats? I know
there's only so much you can do with them. Like, I think the kayaks were the big thing. Plastic boats have personally never really taken off. Unless you count the Pond Prowler and like the Sun Dolphin American.
Mm-hmm.
Micro boats. So I would consider those like micro boats.
And then other than that, it's just large kayaks. And the kayaks get fatter and larger and more boat-like. ICAST keeps running out of like cool things to show. It's just a bunch of gimmicks and like.
Let's make a bigger kayak.
Yeah, pretty much. And this,
how many graphs can you mount on one?
Yes. This last year, the inflatables, there was like 5 of them there. And that's the answer. I think kayaks plastic boats have kind of maybe just, people know what they are. They know what they can reasonably expect from them, and.
Well, the transportability too, right? Like the transportability of the boats, they have the weight of the boats. You have to have a trailer for some of them. And then like even what we've ran into like with the Milha, right, is that it's a portable 175-pound boat. But once you start rigging it out, it becomes a 250-pound beast.
Very quickly.
And then also like load capacity, right? Like it's a really rad boat, but there's only so much load capacity that you can put on a plastic boat of a certain size due to the Coast Guard regulations and all that jazz. Even though the Milha is filled with flotation foam, you still can't get around those basic laws of U.S. Coast Guard ratings, right?
Yeah.
So, like for instance, the Milha in Brazil is designed and runs a 9.9, and guys are running 22, 23 miles an hour all over the place. But when they came to the U.S., that got kicked down to essentially 6 horsepower and a very low weight rating. Just due to the U.S., it's kind of a tween. Those boats are tweeners, right? Like they're in
between a kayak.
Yeah, they're in between a kayak and a boat, and it gets challenging with the weight capacity and the horsepower ratings for those. So I think that's one reason why we haven't seen really any boat truly break through and get mass adoption. Maybe besides like the whaley boats we saw at Ibex, but those are 5 Gs for a 12-foot.
Yeah, and like the Veer.
Yeah, and the Veers have been a massive failure. Like Mercury Marine, if you're listening. Whoever designed the Veer.
It's Lund that designed the Veer.
Well, yes, but Mercury owns them all. Brunswick Marine, yeah.
Brunswick.
Regardless, if someone from
Brunswick... You're
Brunswick...
not going to talk no sense into Brunswick.
No, I'm not. But if you're listening, whoever designed the Veer really wanted to copy a bunch of people and didn't do a very good job of it because it's way overpriced, and it's essentially a 250-pound kayak that costs $10,000.
There's so much of that in the industry, though. Like,
oh, yeah.
When a new product comes out,
Well, that's the thing that I hate the most about the plastic world right now is everything that's usable and affordable is just built so cheaply. Like the Sundolphin American could have been an amazing platform for a plastic boat, but it is so thin that just being out in the sun, they will warp.
Well, and that's the part where these boats are being tweeners, right? Is that it has to be built that way, or else it would be 400 pounds, and it would be ridiculously expensive, right? So that's where like we all want in a perfect world, but there's only so much you can do with plastic, and that being thermoformed plastic is
and
great.
Not rotomolded.
It's very hard to mod them too. You got to do a whole lot of extra things to make sure.
But they're a great boat for if you just want to get on the water and have something simple and basic, like the kits that you make, Chris, for making the deck and you know doing the turf. Like that's all you need for those boats. They're perfect to get out on the water. But if you want them to do any more than that, you're kind of SOL, right?
Yeah. So the only one that I've seen that I personally worked on that I was super impressed with is I think it's called the Bass Hunter.
Yes, those are made in the United States, and honestly they're all made in North America. The Pond Prowler and all that jazz. But those are, I don't know if they're rotomolded, but they're definitely a lot thicker.
They are, and they have some kind of, whenever they make the plastic, because I've had to cut a few of them open to put in hatches and battery storage and stuff like that. They have like a fiber inside of them, like a reinforcing fiber.
Yeah, they're a fibrous composite plastic.
But they are crazy thick. I mean, like super
and they're
thick.
heavy, right?
What's the
they're
cost?
Heavier. They're more expensive.
They're expensive. They're in the like $1,000 to $2,000 range, depending on
they're
which
3
model
times
you
the
get.
cost of the same.
But everybody I have talked to that owns one has nothing but amazing things to say about them. Like they absolutely love them. The biggest problem is they're double the cost of like a Pond Prowler. They're heavier. And they're not sold in a lot of places, so you can't really.
No, the guy that owns them, we've actually talked to him before because we looked at one to become a dealer for them, and they're awesome people and they make an awesome product. But yeah, they do like hunting blinds and a whole bunch of other really cool stuff. And they've made that Bass Hunter for a long time, but it's the weight. To my understanding, it's the weight of them, right? And the cost makes it a little challenging to do like mass distribution, where like. The Pond Prowler and all those jazz are just massively sold to Walmart and Bass Pro Shops, and you can stack them together super quick. You know, they're just much easier to do at scale than the nicer quality, heavier, more expensive Bass Hunter.
It seems like they all suffer from the same little small quirks that we end up having to modify later. Like on the Bass Hunter, it's the same thing as the American 12. The drain hole in the back of the boat is 1.5 inches up off the bottom of the boat. So... And that was one of the very first things that we did to a Bass Hunter. We had a customer come in and was like, do you think you can modify this? And I was like, I don't know, but I ain't got no problem cutting your boat open. I'll try it.
Yeah.
And we ended up putting drain plugs as low as we possibly could, like those little kayak ones where you can screw them in and screw them out, just because he fishes in the rain a lot, and he was just constantly holding water.
Yeah.
He's like, every time I pull this thing out, and he was using one of those little Harbor Freight trailers, he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to break an axle on this thing because I've always got 20 gallons of water in the bottom of it. Yeah. But as far as like modifications and stuff go, none of them have a flat floor, so you can't put turf in them. So you got to come up with something like we did with the American 12. So that's the first thing you got to do, which adds more weight. And then there's no storage. Like storage is non-existent in any of them.
That's really hard to add storage to. Yeah, you kind of just get what you get when you get these boats.
But then like placement things, like one of the things that I'm not super crazy about on the American 12 is the back bench. If you put a seat on top of it, you are so close to the transom that you can't run like even a Spirit or an E-Light because it's in your throat. Like you turn around and you're trying to drive like this, so it forces you to either stand up or take your seat out so that you can sit like as far up on the bench as possible, just to have some room to run the outboard. Like they could have moved that 6 inches further up.
The one they used to make. Have you seen any of these come through the shop, Chris? It's like the Pond Prowler or the American Sundolphin, but it has the 2 seats that are independent of each other and doesn't have benches.
It's almost like a panfish style boat. Yeah,
those. But I don't make them anymore. I'm pretty sure they don't make that.
I've only seen a couple of them. I've never seen one.
Yeah,
in person,
that was like the dream layout. But I wonder how the stability of the hull, right? Because they don't have the cross beams in them, right? So I'm curious if it was a design flaw or what. But like you could fish and spin around 360 and all those with 2 guys, no problem, right? So
well, then you got those crazy ones like, and I keep seeing them, those little round boats.
Oh, those the micro.
What are the
micro skiffs? No, ultra skiffs.
Yeah, ultra skiffs.
Yeah, it's like a little one-person round
boat.
Justin Kayak DIY has one of those, and super rad. But I don't know if I would go out in any water, and I'd probably get sick going out and spinning around in one of those
And
things.
that's the thing that everybody that I've talked to has complained about. I'm like, they're awesome boats. It's functional. Like, everything works, but they don't track worth a crap.
Well, it's a donut. Like, that's not supposed to track. Like,
well, it's kind of like those go boats, those
when you
inflatable
complain
go boats.
about something, yeah, I don't know.
You seen those inflatable go boats where the motor sits through the middle and it looks like a little inflatable donut?
You know, the other one that we get a lot of questions on is the twin troller.
Those are very well built, apparently.
I haven't seen one in person, but I literally answer.
They've been around forever, though.
A lot of guys buy e-propulsion motors for those because they don't want to use their trolling motors. But the cool thing is it's got trolling motors in each pontoon.
Yep.
And it has a metal grate underneath so you don't suck up weeds.
Yep.
Right. And then you can crab walk it, and you can, you can rotate, and it's got, essentially you don't steer it. You just have two throttles, right?
Yep.
And you just do the kind of crab walk, two throttle steering on them. And everybody who I've sold an e-propulsion motor to over the past 3 years has loved that little 3 horsepower platform on
the twin troller.
On the twin troller, and and apparently they're very well built. They're made here in the States.
Everybody has great things to say about them, but it's like
they are more money though. They're like a $3,500, $4,000 boat, but they're like an ultimate pond hopper.
To get somebody to spend that kind of money, there's just that stigma of plastic that's been so hard to surpass.
You need to be a hardcore pond fisherman.
Well, if you ever try some of these thicker rolled molded plastic boats, and you know that they deserve more credit, but trying to get that credit.
Well, it's the same thing with the plastic consoles. When we started selling the rotor molded RPD consoles, people were like, "Nah, I didn't buy no plastic consoles." And then we finally cut one open, and I was like, "Holy crap, these things are stout."
Yeah.
Well, if you don't notice, almost all the manufacturers, the John boat manufacturers that are putting center consoles in their boats or side consoles are
they're going to plastic.
Yeah,
now.
they're going to plastic and plastic consoles. Even like the Grizzly center consoles are essentially I'm pretty sure RPD sells those for the tracker.
Okay.
Grizzly ones that have the live well in front, right? Yeah. And like that's all plastic on top of a aluminum Grizzly hull.
So they're nice.
No, they are.
RPD makes a good console. Yeah.
So Nick, you're a Canadian guy, but you're trying a straight ride tonight.
Do not associate with me with Justin Trudeau. Please, dear God.
If you drink Canadian whiskey, you're basically a Canadian.
Well, Washington's is almost as close as we're going to get to Canada.
I bet you have a whole playlist on your phone of Alanis Morissette.
Nah, Nickelback, brother.
Dude, Nickelback? Oh, yeah.
Going to a Nickelback concert in February.
Oh, man.
So what did you think about
the car drive here?
Yeah, I've been trying to get back in my Nickelback era. My wife's a closet fan, so when she watches this, she'll hate that I outed her. But I'm taking her to a concert in February to go see Nickelback, so I was trying to get back in my like early 2000s, early high school, late middle school days.
Yeah, that was back in the Creed days.
Yeah. So I was trying to get I had to put Mike through that, listening to that in the rental truck today. Small batch Willett family estate. I'm gonna have to give it a rating of wouldn't buy. Again, I would recommend, but I would not buy. I would stick to, a good solid Crown or a good. I would say that the military special Canadian whiskey that can be found at any of your PXs across Army installations, that is a solid $12.
Yeah,
is probably about as good as this probably $100 of Willett Family Estate whiskey. So, sorry, Willett family, if you want to send us free liquor, you can to make up for that. But
poor Willett.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry, but the $12 military special.
You're the
whiskey,
one that said it tasted like bug spray and feet.
Yeah, but
that's the first time I've heard somebody.
I'm not a whiskey connoisseur. Like, it all tastes
obviously. I get a slight pumpernickel breeze on the finish and bug spray.
But it's not bad. But it's definitely, for a casual whiskey drinker like myself, it does not have much distinction between a $12 military special Canadian whiskey.
So, for me, being an actual rye lover, it's not my favorite rye I've ever tried. It is good, but I think it's overhyped for what it actually is. It's got a good solid flavor profile. It's well-rounded. I just feel like it needs more. It's got a little bit of fruit, a little bit of floral. You can definitely taste the rye in it.
Do
but
you
it's
like?
Just,
is it
I
supposed
would like some
to
more
be?
age on it.
Is it supposed to be sweet? So like, here's me. Like as you can see from my figure, I'm a sweets guy, right? So like, ginger ale and Canadian whiskey is right up my alley. Yeah. Is it supposed to have any hintness of sweetness? Because I did not get
Traditionally, ryes do not.
Okay.
They usually have more of a stronger earthy flavor and like pepper. You get a
Got it.
lot of
Makes
people
sense.
describe them as black pepper.
I
Got
did
it. I can get
detect
that.
like somebody put perfume in there.
That's the floral note. When I say floral, some
Like it
people
tasted
perceive
like
that
a
as
swallowed
perfume.
from Dillard's.
Yes.
And it just like lingered back there.
But I
your
actually
nose
smell
lingers.
it more than I taste it.
I get that. You can smell it through your nose and the
Yeah.
aftertaste.
Florally, grassy, earthy notes are usually what you smell in a rye, and what you usually taste is, if it's well aged, it will taste like oak.
So how can you smell that with the alcohol?
It
How does the
takes some
alcohol not burn out your
experience.
nostrils?
It takes an
experience.
acquired taste.
Would you just sit there and sniff on it until it goes away? Like
It's like I tell everybody, Mike, it's an acquired taste, and if you don't like it, go acquire some taste.
that's fair.
and it takes time. It's like wine. Wine, you gotta let it breathe. You gotta let it open up, right? And you gotta let
Yeah.
wine. Yeah, it's same with whiskey.
Okay, Mike, let's review something that you can actually review. John boat, plastic boat, inflatable.
I'd say plastic boats are still at the end.
Okay.
Obviously, the John boats are. I mean, they're still king, but they're not around anymore. And I think the inflatable is on the rise.
Okay.
Versatile. I would have to agree with Mike. I think that I would actually put aluminum John boats last, more so for the fact of the flexibility factor, as well as the availability factor. Like, I mean, you got guys on our Tiny Boat Nation Facebook group that are grabbing $200 John boats out of the backyard of somebody, and they got 58 holes in them,
Yeah.
and you got to weld them all back together, and you hope to God they don't leak. Plastic boats are definitely the same way. But in terms of accessibility, right? Like someone who just wants to get started on the water and go fishing, plastic boats beat out a John boat, I think, almost every time in that regard. If it was 12-year-old me, plastic boat all the way to get started, and then on top of that would be the inflatable would be number one, just due to the versatility, flexibility, packability. It just the opportunities are endless.
Now, are we
with that.
talking for a first boat? Because then the inflatable.
We're
is
just
number
talking
one.
in general.
Well, in general, I mean, it just depends. Like the site, you're not going to buy a 20. Nobody in America is going to buy a 16-foot to 18-foot inflatable, right? Like we don't in Europe. Those are huge, but here that's not a big deal unless you're out in the saltwater, and wanting a European style inflatable. And then obviously you can't go that way with plastic. But if someone who's in the realm of deciding between all three of those, like that's where I would put that.
I'm kind of level. I think they're all tied because I feel like they all have the place.
They do.
But I'm interested to see how the future of inflatables goes, because for people like me and for people like Mike who like to use their creative side of their brain to come up with solutions to problems they don't even know that they have yet,
Or create new problems.
or create new problems by trying to create solutions to problems that don't exist
I
yet.
mean, that's not how I roll, but
That is 100% how you roll.
I solve problems.
You solve your own problems.
And I'll give you a
Those are
classic
the only ones I
example.
care. Yeah.
How many boats have you built without a rod locker?
One.
Okay. Exactly. You can only fish one at a time. You don't need 73 of them.
It's not true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll agree.
It's
to
not
disagree.
true. You stick like 6 rods on a row, and you got to go through all of them before you find a pattern.
You need to get good
Then
with
you can
one
put 'em
before
away.
you buy 6.
It's not true.
No, Mike just buys one everywhere else he goes. Bass Pro Shops. Mike's collecting stickers and receipts from every Bass Pro Shops across the country to buy a new fishing rod
It's not true.
when he goes somewhere.
It's only been like 5.
It's like the old people that put the stickers on the back of their RVs or the magnets on their refrigerators. That's Mike with Bass Pro Shops receipts and
There's a
fishing
lot of
rods.
exaggeration going on in this podcast.
I don't think so.
No, it's
I think there's a lot
It's
of
2
truths
versus
being
1.
told.
terribly invalid. Yeah, but yeah, there is. No.
I've,
Hey,
got
we all love a good St. Croix swim bait rod when we need one,
That
I've
was
actually
one
never
time.
owned one.
Maybe twice.
They're a catfish rod is really what they are.
You know what's sad?
Swim bait rods are just catfish rods, but for bass fishermen.
I've spent the majority of my life being a bass fisherman. I'm only recently rejuvenated and converted over to catfishing.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
No, I'm serious. I spent most of my life bass fishing. I got tons and tons of pictures on my phone running bass fishing since I was
I
a
don't
kid.
believe this.
Yeah, me neither.
I'll show you when we get done with the podcast.
I mean, you argued about.
You're like the
6
bass
rods on the
fisherman.
deck.
You're like the bass fisherman
Yeah.
that eats bass.
I did.
yeah.
We grew up eating bass. That's what we did. Bass and
Louisiana
speckled trout
rednecks.
and crawfish and crab and everything else.
Yeah, you're the bass fisherman that eats bass. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were. I mean, that's how we grew up. But I never owned an expensive bass fishing rod or reel. I always like super cheap because when I fished a lot on rivers, and I had a tendency to lose stuff or break it through anger. So I never bought anything expensive until I got into catfish, and I bought my first rod over $100, and I didn't sleep for like 3 days after this because I can't believe I just did this.
It's because you bought a swim bait rod for catfish.
Basically,
Exactly.
yeah.
They are. Look at them.
A
They're behind
swim bait
us.
rod is not a catfish.
Yes,
rod.
it is. Look behind us.
Yeah,
we
look,
have.
It's too
I got
short.
Those anvil
have
rods. I got
four.
3 of those anvils up there.
It's too short.
We have 4
They're 7
swim bait
foot.
rods up there.
The rod is too short.
They're 7 foot. Is that too short for a swim bait?
It needs to be 8 foot.
I was never a swim bait guy.
Mike's
And
a
it needs to
secret
be
swim bait
light,
snob.
and the tip needs to be fast, and it needs to have a hook for your finger. Those have none of that.
Yeah, those are for reeling and dealing, son.
Yeah, those are for sitting in a rod holder until you're ready to grab it,
Yep.
which is still great. No hate.
Yeah.
But that's what they are. It's not
Yeah.
a swim bait rod.
That's fun.
All right.
Yeah, I can't believe I'd never bought an expensive rod. What's the most expensive rod you've ever bought, Mike?
Oh,
I
don't
talk
ask
about
that
it.
question.
It's not-
We're not
we're not
answering
getting like
public-
specifics. Nah, it's not that's a whole nother podcast topic.
Expensive swim bait rods.
Like, how far does degeneracy go when it comes to fishing? Like,
It's not as bad as other addictions
Just
like
ask your question.
meth or cocaine or fentanyl.
I mean,
Bourbon.
it's like a higher
Bourbon.
level
I
of
spent more on
degeneracy.
bourbon than I have on fishing stuff.
So, yeah.
Don't
I'll
doubt
figure
that one bit.
They get up there. But well, thank you guys very much for flying all the way down here just to do my little podcast. I greatly appreciate
And drink
it.
some $12 whiskey.
Yeah, and drink some $12 whiskey.
Dang.
Do y'all have anything to say before we close it out?
I just want to say I feel exceptionally bad for Willett. I think you got a bad review from these guys. Your family statement, you guys are all right.
Do you want to sponsor Tiny Boat Nation's Drain Blood podcast?
Probably
Yeah.
not after this podcast. This probably did it for us. But, good job, Willie.
They don't care. They're selling this stuff hand over foot.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Mike, what do we say at the end of every podcast? Let's see if you
Oh.
actually listen to any of them.
Stay in school, kids. Don't
Yeah.
do drugs.
Uh-huh.
Fight the good fight.
Okay.
And then for Chris,
Don't eat yellow snow.
call somebody before it's too late. I don't know. I don't know. I got nothing.
We always say at the end of the podcast, don't forget,
Forget your drain plug.
Oh, yeah, don't. Otherwise, you have to use a bunch of Senkos and stick it in the hole and hope it works.
Gary Yamamoto would be
I'm not-
very upset with you that if he knew that
Whatever.
you
He
used
sold
his Senkos.
he sold a bag of Senkos.
I hope you don't have
he
to
sold
stick
2
to-
bags that day. He sold, it's good. I mean, it works.
I hope you don't have to stink too many Senkos down your hole, Mike. That would be
All right,
disturbing.
this is going very badly. All right.
See you guys.